2025 was a great year for Pokemon fan games. There were so many amazing releases that it felt almost impossible to not find something you could enjoy. So of course, I'll be going over what I believe to be the top 10 of this year. And just as I did for ROM hacks, I'll also be dropping a tier list dedicated to every fan game I played in the last 365 days, just a week after this video goes live. With that in mind, I highly suggest you subscribe if you don't want to miss that, or any of the incredible fan projects I'll be covering in 2026. Without further ado, let's not waste any more time, starting with Pokemon Jam Festival at the number 10 spot. It's quite common for fan projects to present you with a story revolving around stopping some world-ending threat. This time, however, you're on vacation, visiting a relatively small yet original region off the coast of Hoenn. Not wanting to just sit around and do nothing though, you pack your bags and decide to participate in the festival trial. I'll be honest, it's very similar to the gym challenge, making your way around the region and collecting a milestone-like reward after defeating each captain. What makes the experience more unique, though, is the region being almost entirely open world. You can take on these challenges in any order, without any restraints on where you can catch Pokemon beforehand. Speaking of Pokemon, this game has a lot of them. I can't confirm whether or not the whole 1045 is here, but I don't feel like you're going to notice the difference either. One thing I'll admit bothered me about the variety was that there was a little more per route than I felt was necessary, creating the need to spend more time running through the tall grass until the one you wanted finally appeared. On the bright side, these Pokemon are extremely easy to train. The EXPL lets you swap party members in and out with ease, and the massive amount of TMs available for you to buy in the region's main city made customizing my team a walk in the park. In response to that, the boss battles are fairly challenging, yet not to the extent that a full team of positive type matchups won't hand you the victory. Jam Festival was pretty short, and it didn't blow me away with its exploration or gameplay. That said, I still had quite a bit of fun, and can suggest it to anyone who wants a simple 10 to 15 hour game with a large amount of Pokemon to capture. Up next is Pokemon Barillo. Due to this game's current length, I was a bit hesitant to include it in this video. Yet, at the same time, every moment of that short experience was absolutely phenomenal. Barillo is a very high quality project from both a visual, gameplay, and even storytelling perspective. The region is put together using a mix of custom graphics inspired by the 5th generation games. Every route is incredibly detailed, while also offering a good amount of optional content within them. If it wasn't obvious from what's been following behind me though, the gameplay has a heavy focus on Fakemon. I know many players feel mixed about custom Pokemon, but even as someone who adores them, I was really blown away. They look amazing, have really balanced and interesting move pools, and most of the available canon Pokemon have also received the regional forms. Not to mention, it's really easy to use and train as many of them as you'd like, since the EXPL can even seep into your PC box. As for the story, it does follow the standard gym challenge formula, though just like everything else in the game, it's told with a lot of care and attention to all of the various characters and conflicts you'll encounter on your journey. It also has one of the best English translations I've ever seen in an originally Spanish fan game. In its current state, the project is only about 10 hours long, taking you just a bit past the second gym. Though, despite that, it's easily the second highest quality Pokemon fan game I played this year. At number 8 is Hollow Woods. Following a similar structure to many other fan games, you'll play as a brand new Pokemon trainer on a journey across an original region with the goal of collecting 8 gym badges. Despite that, the story still had some sense of originality, introducing the various factions that currently or once had control over parts of the region, and showcasing the tensions between them. Contrary to the world building though, the writing of the main cast didn't really move me, especially the rivals. I just couldn't find myself getting attached to any of them. Where I was really impressed with the game though, was the environment. Now, on my first playthrough of the game, I found the world feeling very dull, missing a lot of color and detail. But thanks to a massive update released a few months later, the region feels so much better to explore. I've played many fan projects that make huge attempts to mimic the feel of an official art style, and when it comes to Generation 4, I think Hollow Woods absolutely nails it. The route designs are simple yet colorful, with a collection of calming soundtracks tracks that fit each location perfectly. Even though we're halfway through the segment, I haven't even scratched the surface of its gameplay. The region of Oblar has a really satisfying variety of encounters, made up of handpicked Pokemon from the first 8 generations, alongside 81 new regional forms. I'm not going to lie, most of these forms do not reach the level of craziness you'd find in other popular fan projects that focus on them. Yet they are not at all bad either, with simple designs that are sprited quite well. Not to mention, each one felt pretty strong and didn't lack in any power or learnable moves. Closing things out with the quality of life features, you'll have access to both types of EXP shares, optional level caps and infinite rare candies, and even a setting that heals your team to full after every battle. Overall, Hollow Woods is just a really solid game. Its current version does go up to the 7th gym, so if you're not afraid of unfinished games, I highly suggest you give it a go. Moving on to number 7 is Pokemon Comet. The first thing I need to compliment about this game is how coherent its art style is across the board. The overworld is constructed using a collection of unofficial tiles that all mesh well together, the character sprites both in and out of battle match their respective environments almost perfectly, and the cast of new regional forms don't ever look out of place when standing next to the canon Pokemon. But speaking of those regional forms, not only do they look really good, they also perform very well in battle. One of my personal favorite feats regarding them is how they feel much more rewarding to obtain than those of many other fan games. You won't just find them sprawling through the tall grass, rather hidden in a corner of whatever route you're in, or in the possession of an NPC. It's also worth mentioning these Pokemon are really easy to train, thanks to the EXP All and EXP candies that can be purchased from major cities. Though heading back to the overworld, I also wanted to comment on this game's massive focus on exploration. The wilderness is extremely vast, with the space between most major settlements much wider than you're probably used to. It felt like I was actually exploring a new and mysterious region, rather than being treated like a tourist on my journey through it. Of course, there are still various healing spots spread through these areas, so you won't have to worry about backtracking to the Pokemon Center after every few battles. In its current state, I don't have too much to say about the story. It's not bad, and the gym challenge formula doesn't impede on the game's originality, though I still think it needs more time to grow before I could voice a proper opinion. From both a visual and gameplay perspective, Pokemon Comet really surprised me with its quality. And even though the game does only go up to the 3rd gym, there's still a lot of content allowing you to go up to level 50. The regional form-focused games just don't stop coming, with Pokemon Decay at number 6. Before we dive into the Delta Pokemon though, I want to talk about the other, more unique gimmick that Decay heavily advertises. Upon starting up a new save, you'll be almost immediately introduced to the region's history, and how its creation was thanks to a series of natural disasters, merging Kanto, Johto, Hoenn, and Sinnoh together. Assuming you're immediately wondering the implications of that, I'll first go ahead and say that you won't be venturing through warped versions of those regions' routes. Maybe I'm wrong about that and just didn't look hard enough, but I will credit that these new locations bear some resemblance to the old regions, at least through their design philosophy. Although the one thing I do have actual criticism for is that the quality of the various maps you'll be progressing through contrasted each other quite a bit. Whenever a map used mostly custom Generation 3 styled graphics, it was really pretty to look at and fun to explore. Though when a location was made up of mostly default fire red tiles, I couldn't help but admit that it was pretty bland. Another, yet more obvious consequence of this event is that many characters from those regions are what make up this game's cast. I know I've complained in the past about fan projects that use mostly canon characters, although for Decay's sake, it does actually make sense and does kind of work. Even with that said, the overall plot was still pretty basic, as it's intended to mimic the storylines of those older titles. On to what I'm sure most people care about the most, the gameplay. Like I mentioned earlier, Decay has a focus on regional variants, who were another result of the first 4 regions merging together. To be honest, I don't have too many feelings about the forms I don't share with other fan games that include them. They look pretty good, add some spice to the gameplay, and make each batch of new encounters a bit more exciting. The difficulty is also comparable to most others, being only slightly harder than the older entries of the main series. Altogether, I think Decay is a great game. It lacks the deeper narrative some people crave in Pokemon fan projects, but if that doesn't bother you, I can't see a world where you don't come out of it satisfied. At number 5 is HGSS Sevi Islands. Originally, I wasn't really considering this game to be so high on the list, though the most recent update would end up changing my mind, as it fixed many of the project's performance issues, providing a much smoother gameplay experience. On to the actual game, HGSS Sevi is an unofficial sequel to Heart Gold and Soul Silver, mainly taking place in, you guessed it, the Sevi Islands. Your main goal will be to track down the remaining legendary beasts that roam across it, while fighting off Team Rocket, attempting to uncover the reasons behind their return. The story didn't blow me away, yet it was still pretty fun, and in my opinion did a good job of preserving the canon content of the games it's a continuation of. But taking on the role of a trainer who has already defeated 16 gym leaders, you obviously aren't going to begin with a level 5 starter. Instead, the game initiates with the choice between a couple dozen Johto Pokemon, and even a few legendaries that it would have made sense for you to have caught on your original journey. I at first wasn't a big fan of this concept, though it quickly grew on me, and after some thought, I realized it was handled much better than many games with a similar play as an established champion concept. Your team only starts around the mid-level 30s, and there's still a lot of room for them to grow during your adventure. Speaking of the adventure, it doesn't end in the Sevi Islands. Once you finish the main story, you'll actually be able to go to the Hoenn region and take on the entirety of its gym challenge as well. Overall, HGSS Sevi didn't topple my expectations or provide me with an unforgettable experience. Yet, it's still a completed game that's absolutely jam-packed with content, making it a must-play if you're a fan of the first 4 generations. At number 4 is another game I originally didn't plan to be so high on the list, mainly because of its current length. Yet, giving it a second playthrough and understanding how well it does everything seriously made me reconsider. But this is Pokemon Bioterror, a game where your story begins with no memory of who or where you even are. After barely managing to escape the clutches of Team Sodius, you embark on a journey across the region of Kemia in an attempt to understand more about the world you've been dumped into. Now, the plot is good, the characters are well written, and the mix of gameplay between each arc is nicely paced. Though this game accomplishes something I barely see even attempted in many other fan projects, and that's environmental storytelling. The dialogue doesn't tell you everything about the world you're in. There are a lot of little details for you to piece together, some that can only be understood if you've already connected the dots of the last small puzzle. Of course, playing for only the main story, ignoring many of these minute details, won't do much harm in my opinion. It's just so rewarding to solve these mysteries the plot doesn't hand to you directly, and makes you feel like you're actually connected to the game's world. Though, like you've probably already noticed, Bioterror also features a cast of regional forms, and even a handful of original Pokemon. Something more unique to this game, though, is its customization. From the start, or throughout your adventure, you can modify the difficulty mode, how you want EVs to be allocated, the shiny rate, EXP share, and even if you want to be able to control your partner's Pokemon during multi-battles. All those features combined just make the collection of unique boss battles even more enjoyable to engage with and strategize for. Despite being only about 15 hours long with 4 gyms, Bioterror is a very good game, one that will likely even rival the likes of Pokemon Reborn once it's further along in development. Moving into the top 3, we have Pokemon Awakening. Advertising itself as a story-focused fan game, you actually won't be participating in any sort of gym challenge. Instead, your goal will be to travel across the world and seek out the treasures guarded by powerful Pokemon. Along the way, you'll encounter other good-hearted people and assist them against those who seek to use the same treasures for their own personal gain. Now, I'm gonna be completely honest, I think the story is the weakest aspect of this game. Obviously, it's not bad, or else I don't think I'd be putting it this high. It just, for the most part, feels like your average fantasy adventure, where I wasn't left with much to think about afterwards. Although I will credit that not caring for the story didn't seem to harm the game's progression, as there were ways I could easily understand where to go next, and a lot of the less important dialogue was actually optional. On the contrary, the adventure was really fun. Awakening's world is massive, maybe a bit more than it needs to be, though I'll admit I had a good time sometimes getting lost during my journey, and finding some treasures I would have never stumbled upon sticking to the main path. The overworld encounters also did a great job bringing the place to life. Most of the time they'll just be prancing around in the tall grass, yet occasionally they will charge out at you. On the same page as the exploration, Awakening's gameplay is also pretty strong. The Pokemon variety consists of those from generations 1 through 9, and thanks to the expansive wilderness, the encounter pools never felt crowded. These Pokemon are also very easy to train, with both the EXPL that can seep into your PC boxes, and the ability to earn money very easily. These made the game's base difficulty really fun to engage with, as I always had a wide variety of options to take into each challenge. Overall, Awakening is pretty good. I can't lie that it being completed does contribute to its ranking on the list over some other games I personally enjoyed more, yet it's still a really solid experience that won't disappoint if you desire a longer adventure with a lot of Pokemon to capture. At number 2, we have Pokemon Zirconium. This game does not pull any punches, dropping you right into the wild with your starter not even 2 minutes in. Though, upon reaching safety, what you might have thought was just a short tutorial dungeon is actually a piece of something much bigger. You see, the region of Honus is split into 2 halves. The surface, where people and Pokemon live in harmony, exercising the lifestyle you're familiar with, and the underground, a connection of massive caves filled with Pokemon wandering about. To put it as simply as I can, the surface feels like your average Pokemon adventure, while the underground expresses the dangers closer to a Legends game. Yet, the originality of this project isn't exclusive to its world, as Zirconium introduces a brand new battle gimmick called Treat Traits. By using a special item alongside ingredients you've collected, you're able to create treats that can be fed to your Pokemon, giving them special buffs. This includes empowering moves based on their type, or increasing their resistance to one. I'll admit this system did seem a bit overpowered at the start of the game, though over time, you'll find more and more trainers using it to the same extent. However, if you're someone who doesn't want to worry about that and prefers a much more laid-back challenge level, you can always switch to a lower difficulty at any point. Despite such a heavy focus on gameplay and exploration, Zirconium doesn't actually abandon attempts to tell a story. You do follow the standard 8 gym formula, yet I was really surprised with how much attention was given to every character. Each town was given its own arc, and every gym leader has a heavy place in the story, making your battle against them much more memorable. Not to mention, the game easily has one of the most unique antagonist groups in the entire Pokemon fan project scene. This is very clearly a game made with a lot of love and care applied to every section of it. I highly suggest you give it a try if you aren't afraid of unfinished games, as it currently goes up to the 3rd gym, taking your team to around the mid-level 40s. And finally, taking the number 1 spot is Pokemon Flux. If you aren't familiar with the basics of this game, it takes place in a brand new region with over 150 new Pokemon. As a brand new trainer, your goal will be to take on the league by collecting 3 emblems from different corners of the map. While fighting 3 gym leaders instead of 8 might sound a little lame, the quality of these challenges are much greater. You'll start by taking down other competitors of your choice before facing off against the league boss, who seems to be themed around Pokemon living in the area rather than a specific type. Furthermore, there are plenty of other conflicts you'll be dealing with in between these milestones, separating the adventure even more from the classic gym formula. But perhaps I'm getting ahead of myself, because while I like the story and especially the region, my main reason for obsessing over this game is easily the Fakeamon. I know one of my most common compliments for new Pokemon is, wow, they look cool and are fun to use, which, in my defense, does apply to most fan projects that include them, though for Flux's case, there is so much more to be said. Each one has their own fully animated sprite in battle, alongside the ability to follow you outside in the overworld. This obviously made fights feel way more alive, and your bond with each team member stronger, thanks to having them walk beside you. As for the gameplay, it goes a step further than just good balance, with a new system called the Flux moves. To put it simply, these are basically like Z or Dynamax moves, with the ability to customize their stat boost and attacking type. Although I will admit that training more than a single party of these Pokemon was originally a bit of a chore. Even though you had the EXP all, growth really started to slow down once you reached the second chapter of the story. Though, after some constructive criticism from myself and the community, the developers would greatly increase the experience gain of powerful opponents, allowing you to easily swap Pokemon in and out of your main party. With an incredible roster of new Pokemon, an expansive new region to explore, and a surprisingly fun story, Flux is just one of those games I can't believe exists as a free-to-play fan project. If you want to learn more, I do highly suggest checking out my full review linked below, but unless you have zero care for unfinished games, I don't see a world where the 20 hours of content currently available won't leave you with a satisfying experience. But that's going to wrap up this video. I hope you enjoyed, and be sure to subscribe to never miss out on the latest Pokemon fan projects. Thank you to my channel members for their continuous support, and have a nice rest of your day.